All right. And we are live. Thanks, everyone, for checking into the Naturalist Capitalist. I got a couple of my friends here on the show that been on several times. Tommy Salmons, he's my fellow truck driving, skeptical. He doesn't call himself libertarian or anarchist or any of that shit because you get all this fucking bullshit that comes along with those names.
Too much fucking baggage, man. I don't need any more baggage. 43 years old. I got plenty of fucking baggage.
And of course, we've got my co-host on the Four Horsemen, good New Hampshire friend of mine, advocate for liberty and being against wars and all that shit and exposing, Mossad connections with, or the rape rings that are running our country, all that shit. Eric Jackman, how you doing tonight, man?
Goddamn Mossad. And my check's late this month, Mossad, by the way. So get it into my Venmo or something. And tonight we're sponsored by Gerald Steiner Mineral Water, folks. This is the mineral you need to fight the New World Order. It's got colloidal silver in it. It's got a disinfectant agent where you can spot the Rockefellers from a mile away, folks. You just drink a gallon of this and you're ready to go. You're going to be hard like a stallion. SaveInfowars.com. Yeah, Reed, thanks for reaching out, man. We were just bullshitting earlier like we often do. And you wanted to shoot the shit with some fun people, a little secret show surprise for the good people out there on Twitter and YouTube. And here we are. Last night was fun, man. I really enjoyed that with the young guns, the young guy there. Wow, David
I think
Brady.
We might have scared him a little bit, but
I mean, dude, when Dawson's weaponized, man, and he's full fucking nuclear red pill.
Oh yeah, when he's had a little Jack Daniels in his system, watch out. I think there was a little bit last night.
He went into the liquor store there. He's like, Jackman, there's stuff you can't have, more stuff you can't have right now. You're not drinking more stuff. It's fucking clown world, Reed. And I've been working on my Dawson. I was doing it this morning for Mike. It's just like, man, it's just a fucking clown world. It's clown world.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working on it, Reed. It's a work in progress, and you all are all right for fucking Yankees.
Yeah,
fucking Yankees.
Well, it is clown world. I mean, think of what has happened just this week. Like, this has been the longest week of my life. I can't believe it's only been 1 week. But like, Elon Musk is going to buy Twitter. We created a Ministry of Truth, and we sent like $33 billion to Ukraine, or we proposed it. I don't know if we've actually sent it yet, but
probably hadn't been sent, but they're working on it.
Yeah, it's just like, what the fuck is going on here? And then there's been other stuff too, AOC, and that's pretty incredible, isn't it, Eric? The AOC.
The meme of
Elon Musk.
Elon's like, she wants to date me. Leave me alone, dude. They'd have major.
I'm shy.
They'd have major sex. Like Musk would come in a fucking Tesla that has a bunch of dildos on it, with, like, coming out of the doors that are like electronic and coming right for AOC, and she'd love it, dude. And he could cuck that ginger little cuck that she's with.
He would finally make an Iron Man suit just for that.
That'd be everything. But it's amazing. We can see oligarchs on the public square beefing with other oligarchs, Saudis, politicians. It's amazing, dude. It's actually a very exciting time to be alive, Reed. I know we go back and forth about I missed out on the right time to be born, and I shouldn't have been in these times, dude. We're right where we need to be.
I just like the biggest annoying thing. I talked about this on David Brady's show, and I said something about it on Twitter. But it's the Globo homo. Villains that just suck. Like, at least like in Star Wars, you have, the Galactic Empire, and they've got the Death Star and the, Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers. Like, they're the bad guys, and they're blowing up a whole planet, so they're evil as fuck, but they're at least like kind of badass. And it's like, yeah, these are the villains we're taking on. Or like in World War II, you had the Nazis, like they were fucking elite and, everything. And then the Russians were the bad guys, and they have the gulags, and, they have like all of Eastern Europe or whatever. But now the bad guys are fucking, Mary Poppins singing a fucking song about this. It's just like, what the fuck is this? This is so gay. It's so stupid.
She the autistic blow up doll, Reed?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. You couldn't even write the script for this level of clown world, and it's fucking clown world, man. Yeah. And it gets more surreal. There's like no basement to clown world.
Yeah, it's
And,
like the catacombs that the Azov battalion is hiding in Ukraine. Like that's how low it goes,
yeah,
Like,
Azov's down there. They're recording audio versions of Anne Frank's diary together down there, in the basement at the Anne Frank house. Folks, we got pen to paper documents at the Anne Frank house. The Azov battalion doing an audio version of it, being narrated by Soros and all those globalist scum folks, and we're coming for them. We know about you, Soros, the audio version of the Anne Frank diary, which was a hoax, folks, by the way. They found it in the basement at Sandy Hook. Google it. Google it, folks. Infowar.com.
Oh, Jesus. And I mean, I'm wondering what he's got in that bottle, because I've been drinking beer since 5 o'clock and I'm not feeling that good.
Dude, Tommy, I'm sober. Tomorrow will be 4 months. I haven't had any alcohol. So
oh, really? Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm trying to do at least 6 months. Well, not trying. I'm going to do at least 6 months. And in July, I'm going to see 2 of the Beach Boys, which is on my dad's birthday. My dad would have been 67 this July. So I'm going to see how I feel. I might let it rip and have some beers, or I might just keep going. So we're going to see. We're going to see how I feel. But right now, Tommy, I'm fueled by the Spirit. I'm fueled by Christ. I'm fueled by the spirits going through me to fight demons like Hillary Clinton, like AOC, like Kamala Harris, like Dianne Feinstein. These are all literal demons, folks, and they will be defeated. Infowars.com. Save Infowars.
Eric, I haven't had time to read this new 9/11 shit that came out about Saudi. Is it the same thing they were talking about like a month ago, or is it something new?
Well, this Nelson said this with Mike on Jackman Radio a couple nights ago, that this confirms all the stuff about the 28 pages and about Omar Bayoumi being an asset of Saudi intelligence. It's fucking video footage of this guy at a party out in California with the 2 hijackers out in the San Diego cell, Khalid Al-Mihdhar and Nawaf Al-Hazmi. And, before it was like, oh, Bayoumi just by chance ran into him and knew him. He wasn't supporting him. Here he is at a fucking house party with them, So, and there's new pictures of Bayoumi, because before we'd only really seen one picture of him. So it's a lot more in-depth material like that. And I think 14,000 documents. So, your real gumshoes like Adam and Thermal haven't even really been able to go through them yet, but I'm sure they're going to dig up some juicy details and some nuggets from them.
Yeah.
And these are documents that I think they were discovered over in England a couple of days after 9/11. They were already on the case of these guys. I mean, they knew they were connected to it and involved in it. But because of the political damage it would do to Bush and company, they covered it up and hid it for all these years. So now, only 21 years later, your normie people are like, holy shit, wow, here's proof that the Saudi government, the kingdom, or at least elements of it, and intelligence were involved with material and financial support for at least 2 of the hijackers. So this is the proof that the families have been fighting to get out there and put out there for the public to see, because a lot of them know about this stuff, but they can't talk about it because of the ongoing litigation with the kingdom. So, for people like us who've been paying attention to this, it's a validation that we're not fucking crazy, and that 9/11 does not happen without Saudi Arabia.
Wait, so why were they giving all this money for these guys to shoot a missile into the Pentagon? I'm kind of missing the point here.
Well, folks, that was something that came from the Cosmos, folks. It was with the Galatians and the Azov battalion. They had extra Scud missiles that Saddam Hussein gave them in Kosovo in the 90s. You can Google this stuff, pen to paper. Yeah, I know, man. Fucking clown world, Reed. So it's just good. It's vindication, and it's proof of complicity, and that this plot was way bigger than some fucking 6'4" bearded dude in a cave in Afghanistan hooked up to a dialysis machine.
Yeah. I think for anyone who's watching this who isn't very familiar with the 9/11 backstory with the Israeli Mossad and the Saudi government being involved, the important part here is that if you deny the existence of hijackers to fly these planes into, especially the Pentagon, because that's where the paper trail from the Saudis comes. But then also, if you deny the whole Flight 93 story, then all these questions about why are there only 3 hijackers when they say there are 4, and why is there not this white-looking dude on the plane who supposedly was piloting it, but there's only 3 dudes with dark skin, and, they never yell out Ziad Jarrah's name, so he's probably not on the plane at all, certainly not flying it. And then you find out he has close relatives in the Israeli Mossad. You know, like if you bark up the wrong tree, you never end up finding out about any of this stuff. And these are where the real open ends are and where the paper trail is and the connections that are incriminating. But if you're just chasing why did Building 7 fall down forever, you know, like you're just kind of looking in the wrong area.
Gravity.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and large pieces of it were damaged and missing from 210-story buildings falling on it.
Yep.
You know, that, people want to move to the side and not focus on. But yeah, that's the real deep stuff that people really need to look at once they get out of clown world of missiles and no planes and passenger faked phone calls. I mean, I just said to my friend the other day, I'm like, look, dude, they found the DNA of passengers at the Pentagon. The fucking Flight 77 hit the Pentagon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you don't fake all their DNA at the Pentagon. Then how do you do that? How do you do that? Because that's what you're telling me. Then that somehow they got all of their DNA at the Pentagon and faked it.
Yeah,
It's fucking clown world, dude.
for sure.
Yeah. So what's going on, Tommy? Where do you dig it into these days, man?
I'm reading Charles Galton Darwin right now. It is some of the most insane shit I've ever read in my life. It'll drive you crazy because like this guy, I mean, he's related to Charles Darwin and he's also related to the Galtons. Okay. So Charles Darwin had this like kind of experimental philosophy about the evolution of society where he thought that they could create like superhumans by inbreeding amongst like the wealthy and the elites. And so Charles Galton Darwin, Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley all came from this kind of experiment that they did between these families of all breeding amongst each other. And when you're reading this, he's a scientist, so you have to kind of, it's not a long book, but it's kind of dense, right? So you have to kind of read it and absorb what he's saying. And the guy is what basically, as far as what I can tell, because you hear a lot of it, a lot of conspiracy kind of ideas running around this whole book. From what I can tell, what this guy was trying to do was say like, look, what we need to focus on is infrastructure and science. You can't control people. You control the infrastructure. You control the science, and that makes people move in a certain direction. And so in order to get people to move in the direction we want these people to move, we're going to have to take control of this infrastructure and this science and convince them that this is the right way to go. And I would guess that most of the people that are in DC right now in elitist circles around the world right now, if not influenced directly by this book, are influenced by somebody who is influenced directly by this book.
Yeah, in that circle.
Yeah.
We've got another guest joining us.
Wow, that's interesting, man.
Adam Fitzgerald. How you doing tonight, Adam?
Thank you guys for having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam, good to see you, man.
Hey, Adam, nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you, Tommy. How are you?
I'm good, man. I've been meaning to meet you.
Oh, is that where do I know you from?
Year zero.
Oh, that's you. Okay.
Yes, sir. That's me.
Tommy was.
I'm sorry.
Tommy
I apologize. I'm going to apologize up front for whatever I did.
Tommy got captured in Building 0, not Building 7. You don't ever. The 9/11. Excuse me. The 9/11 Commission always omits Building 0. And Tommy has a lot of explosive information about that.
I was birthed in Building 0.
Exactly on year 0.
Yeah, we were talking before we went live that Tommy was at at Childerberg last year, a libertarian Bilderberg joke, and a bunch of people saw him and didn't know who he was, and they started talking, and they all were like, "Hey, are you Tommy?" Because his podcast is audio only, unlike ours. So
They heard the voice of God.
yeah. So how you been, Adam? It's been a big week with all this stuff about the Saudi connection coming out, or what? How's life been?
It was huge, actually. I've heard that there was actually a 20-minute video of a house party with two of the 9/11 hijackers, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And I just got finished reading 510-page document released by the Biden administration, and I did 3 videos on that, and one recently.
Machine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
what the fuck do I even podcast?
It's enormous news, because we now have, for the first time, what we realized all along was that a Saudi government entity is actually paying for a Saudi government agent who is giving money to 2 Al-Qaeda operatives. And they denied it all along. I mean, Omar al-Bayoumi basically said that to the 9/11 Commission, said that, I never was getting paid by a government employee, and, I didn't certainly give them money to do whatever they wanted. But that's not true. He certainly did. The 510-page report is basically from 2 FBI investigations. One is the Pent Bomb report, and the other is Operation Encore. But it came out in 3 different stages. So even though the 510-page classification, it's not fully declassified. There's redactions in it still.
So Adam, when you're reading a 500-page document or whatever, like how many pages do you make it through before you're like, okay, I need to go outside and take a 5-mile walk or whatever? Could you just sit down and do the whole thing, or what's it like?
I did 104 pages a day.
Damn. Jesus. And you can remember it all? You don't have to read it twice or anything, or?
Generally I know some of it. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that are basically known to the public, but there's there's also certain stuff in there that is certainly remarkably revealing. It's never been before. And that's when I did a video on that about a month ago when the news broke. I did 2 videos. In fact, when I finally got the pages downloaded, I made a video at 5:10 in the morning. Because I couldn't believe what I was reading. And I thought this should have been front page news. The only agency that reported on this right away was NorthJersey.com. Some, little off the wall publication online.
Oh, wasn't the governance of disinformation?
No, nobody covered it. This is the reason why they're doing it, is because the State Department's still protecting their interest in Saudi Arabia. That's all. Yeah. And the reason why is because we do have intelligence agencies that were involved in intentionally withholding information about hijackers living inside the United States.
Yeah, Adam, you got to run this by Nina Jankovic first to make sure that it's accurate. She's the new approver of correct information.
She was the one singing karaoke at the house party with Bayoumi and 2 hijackers.
She was singing her Mary Poppins song into the karaoke machine.
Yeah, she was singing about fucking passports for terrorists out of the Jeddah off Saudi Arabia.
How many fucking Muslims do I have to sleep with to become famous?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you see that video? The Christmas Carol thing. Oh god.
They got that, folks. They did that in Nancy Pelosi's basement near the Bohemian Grove, folks. I got the documents on that.
That was just before Megan Fox started drinking the blood of Machine Gun Kelly.
Dude, what the hell?
God, and you know what? Because we're just clown world is so accelerated, this shit just comes out. It's fire hosed out at us, and you just get a shrug. Oh, yeah. So what?
Yeah. In 2020, the Pentagon was basically saying UFOs are real and they've been here, and everyone was just like, yeah, whatever. It's like, wait, this is the big question: is there life out there? And then everyone was just like, yeah, but did you see everything else that's going on too?
Wow. Wait, you mean whenever they were telling me that dude was telling me the other day that he got raped by an alien, he wasn't lying to me? What happened?
It was Bill Clinton's alien clone from Mars. I came down on that.
More of Johnny Depp than we did of Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, that just.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
exactly.
Jean-Luc who,
man.
Jean-Luc who was that? That guy.
Exactly.
Jean-Luc Depp, folks. Infowars.com. Yeah, it's just a complete fucking mockery of our intelligence, and it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, Johnny Depp, right? We learned more about Amber Heard taking a shit in his bed than the people on the black book and the client list for Glenn Maxwell.
We get to hear about Will Smith fucking slapping the shit out of some fucking comedian when Randy Quaid in Independence Day was telling the truth the whole time.
Remember me, yours.
But it's meant to distract you from learning
all right.
about the real important issues of what's happening in your name. That's all. The bread
Exactly.
and circuses of the Romans are still relevant today.
It's just like Adam, when I had you on Jackman Radio and then we hung out for an hour afterwards, and I had just gone to a Red Sox game and I told you about how that's the bread and circus for grown men,
Yes.
where you're a grown man and you pay hundreds of dollars to wear a jersey or a shirt with some young kid's name on the back and buy $15 beers to go scream at a field of a bunch of overgrown men playing a child sport, you know? So
Yeah.
Sports are part of that, the Johnny Depp bullshit, entertainment, you know, all of it. It all exists as the great distraction. And it's always been that way. And it's just so weaponized now and so fire hosed into everybody's face and every aspect of our lives. Like, if you just step back, like, why do I need to care about some retarded actor and his drunk actor and his stupid ex-wife? Why do I need to care about that? Why am I looking at that? And a lot of people can't even get to the point where they'll ask that question. Well, they'll ask themselves, why is this so prevalent in our society?
I'm proud to say I didn't even know who Amber Heard was. Like, I am so removed from all that. Like, I was, with all this Disney stuff going on, I was trying to remember the last Disney movie I watched in theaters. And I think it was Avengers Endgame. And I was thinking that came out like 2 or 3 years ago, but I guess it was like 6 years ago. And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm a boomer, even though I'm only 28,
No, I'm like you. I'm completely like just like removed from all of this. When they were like Johnny Depp is suing Amber Heard, and I was like, Amber who?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Never heard of her.
Yeah, I've never heard of the Heard until Johnny Depp brought the Heard to my attention because she shit in his bed. And the whole Disney thing. My kids are all grown. I don't watch Disney movies. My kids are shit. I only got one more left to graduate. I got one graduating this year, and the next one graduates next year, and that's the last one. Man, I have a granddaughter. I haven't watched a Disney movie with her. I think Pixar is what's in the in style nowadays. So I'm like, I don't know what this is. Like, what I watched The Jungle Book when I was 5.
So Adam, how many movies do you get around to? Because it seems like you're just always like hammering out content and reading stuff. So do you do anything in like your free time? Do you have any hobbies or anything? Or
for myself? Well, I mean, I'm an MMA enthusiast. I trained at Vanderlei Silva's school back in Las Vegas in 2008.
Oh, really? Wow.
I followed MMA since 1993. I'm actually a rare program collector. And right into the side of me, there's a drawer. And on top of it, there's 450 programs from Japan that I collect. And what I'm trying to do is, trying to collect the first 100 programs of the UFC. And I have every single Pride FC program. Probably one of the few people in the country that may have had that. But I guess in terms of fun, I don't watch TV. Haven't watched TV in 12 years. I stopped watching sports altogether. I just think it's irrelevant now. But I think I mentioned this when Jackman interviewed me, is that when I started studying about geopolitics and the intelligence agencies and the history thereafter of these nefarious organizations like the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, it was a switch that turned on permanently. And what I mean by that is that when one obtains knowledge, you sacrifice the blissful appearance of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And there is no off switch. I had a conversation just yesterday about this. Was that it was a young guy who asked me, what, why did you do it? Like, what, don't you wish you could go back to like when you were a Yankee fan in the 90s and 80s? And I said, I think about this every day, that there's a yin and yang within me, and it exists in everybody. That if we had a choice between the ages of like 52, which is what my age is now, or 18, I'm going to say that, and I'll be convicted in doing this. I'll say 99% will pick 18 years old. The happiest moments of their lives. They didn't worry about the stresses of life. Didn't know whether they were not going to have a home to go to. Worried about paying rent or having the kids full, with food and paying the bills. All of this comes at a price. And I think that's what I would say about obtaining knowledge is that the more you learn about the world, the more you lose your innocence of that part of you, of what you are. It's at times I feel like quitting, but then I say, well, it's not like I could go back to what gave me happiness, playing basketball and going to baseball games, Yankee games anymore. I know all this doesn't matter, because the real things that matter are the things that you both cover. You read, Tommy, Eric, you guys cover on a daily basis. And I'm fortunate to run into people like you, because at least there's somebody out there who is trying to basically inform the world with a little bit of humor, I might add, about what is important in life.
True.
So, if I could just, say that much, yeah, I could say that. But, there is no off switch to this, unfortunately.
He's right about that. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling just beat down, just overwhelmed, because I was buried in books and podcasting 3 times a week. And I was just like, man. And then when I wasn't podcasting or reading a book, I'm out gardening and messing with my chickens. And it's just like constant work. And I utilize all the stuff that I learned to motivate me to do the things I have to do at home to make sure we're fed and we're taken care of. But at some point you have to unwind. So yeah. I just said, screw it. I got a bonus and I'm going to Guitar Center. I haven't played bass in 20 years, but I'm buying a bass. I'm buying an amp, and I'm going to spend at least 3 hours every week just relaxing and messing around with music and doing my thing, because I can't keep doing it. It's not good for me. All it does is make me want to drink more. And, it's just like, I want to be around for a little while, at least a couple more years. And I'm like, this isn't good for me. Like all this stress, feeling beat down all the time. My wife's not political at all. So I don't talk to her about politics unless it's something like super serious, So like whenever I was like seeing that there was going to be a fertilizer shortage, I was like, hey, we need to get a hold of this guy. We need to get a hold of that guy. We need to get some beef. We need to get this. We need to make sure our vegetables are growing, because by the end of the year, it's going to be a bad time for everybody. So like we have to make sure that we're set up. So we did what we had to do, but I don't talk to her about these things. She didn't listen to my podcast. She didn't want to know about all this stuff, so I have to take, I found that I have to take at least some time for myself to just decompress, completely just let it all out and forget about everything that's going on, whether that's listening to comedy or whatever. I'm not a TV guy. I'm not a movie guy. I'm not a sports guy. So I'll turn to like comedy. I'll turn to playing music or listening to music or going out to my pond and fishing all day or something like that, because you got to find a way to let all of it go, because it is so overwhelming all the time.
Yeah, and it can beat you down. I mean, that's what Mike's doing right now. That's why I had the place to myself today, because he's at a gig banging on drums for 3 hours.
Yeah,
getting paid good money to play music with his band. Do you guys find this, like some nights when I finally lay my head down in my bed and I don't sleep, like I'm going to be up, I know I'm going to at least be up for another 2 hours obsessing over shit and thinking about shit. Do you guys just think about the people you want to talk to and have on your shows and interview and the information you want to learn more about? Because, I mean, we're always doing that, but like, especially before you're going to bed or you're trying to go to bed, that's when I'm just like, okay, I want to talk to this person. I want to do a show with this guy. I want to have this guy on. I want to bring these people together. He knows more about that part of it than I do. He knows more than I do. They together it would be a great convo. Like I obsess about this shit all the time.
Yeah,
I'm a drunk because of this. Like seriously, what my real passion is fiction, right? So I would get like a small idea in my head and I would go to sleep and I would sleep for like an hour and I'd wake up and I'd have to write. And so I would get up and I would write for 4 or 5 hours and I'd go back to bed for 2 hours and I'd get up and go to work. And it just wasn't working for me. So like what I started doing was drinking a couple of beers every night to kill that thought process, to like just push it away. And now it's become habit. I drink at least 3 to 4 beers a night just to make sure that nothing keeps me up during the night whenever I'm trying to sleep, because I have to have that sleep to function the next day.
Yeah, I've been horrible at sleeping. Like it's like maybe once every couple of weeks I'll actually have a solid night of sleep all the way from the time I go to bed to when I wake up. And I've always been that way. I'm not a very deep sleeper, but what'll usually happen is I'll build that up for like 7 or 8 days, and then I'll just be like, okay, now I need to sleep for 12 hours, and just kind of wipe the slate clean. But yeah, I'm always thinking, I don't understand people who can, they say they can space out, and I don't, or and not think about
meditation
anything.
or whatever. Yeah. I've never had that benefit of being able to clear my mind. My mind is not clear.
Meditate when you know what this group of gangsters are doing to us day in and day out, right? Fucking us. I mean, no, I'm not going to meditate. Okay, well, get on a microphone and fucking scream about it.
Right. Who's interesting to talk to about meditation would be my buddy. I don't know if you've talked to him or not, Reed, but he's really interesting to talk to. John Hartman. He'd be really interesting to talk to about meditation. He did a series of videos on meditation, and he's like, look, man, all that shit going through your head, that's part of the meditation. You need to flesh it out. Like that's part of it, is fleshing it out. You got to get it out of you. So he talks about embracing all these things that are happening and all the thoughts that you're having. I just haven't gotten to the point where I haven't graduated to be able to embrace everything. I got to shut it all off because it never shuts down. It's either like Eric described, like I'm thinking about all these interesting conversations I could have. I want to hear more conversations, or I'm writing a story in my head and now I'm living in a different world and it affects my day-to-day activities and the way I interact with everybody, because there's another world that's occurring inside my head that I'm actually like really engaged in, and it fucks everything up. If you read like Hunter S. Thompson's like daily routine, and I'm like, I read that and I'm like, yeah, no wonder. So he's like, he gets up at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, starts doing coke and drinking, and then eats like 3 plates of fettuccine, and then at midnight he's ready to sit down and write. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like,
yeah. To answer your question, Eric, every night actually, and that's not an exaggeration. Like I for example, I spend anywhere between 5 to 6 hours a day on 9/11 related issues. Wow. But I can afford to do that because I'm single. So
yeah.
Well,
but I'm not so single-minded. I can't do that, man. I'm like squirrel, and I'm like, right. I've read half of this book. I understand it. I'm gonna read this one now, and I read half of that one. I go back to the one I was reading before.
Right. No, it's not. When I say 9/11 related issues, like it's either U.S. foreign policy with Israel, Saudi Arabia, the understanding of Middle East culture, Wahhabism, the Israeli Saudi issue, the Israeli Muslim issue. There's a lot of things you could research and whatnot.
But I think Reed invited Adam on just to make me feel like a bum.
No.
It makes all of us feel like a bum. So
No, one thing that this ended up doing to me was I became an introvert, actually.
Yeah.
And psychologically, it's damaging because I think Eric and Reed, you guys got it right. Is that you can research, depressing issues, but still have time to, be a human.
Mhm.
I'm
Have
very
fun.
monotone. I'm very unemotional, and I think that's another reason why I can delve into the more morbid issues of humanity. Um, but at the same time, it has a negative effect in that, my general outlook of humanity is very depressing.
Yeah.
But it would be remiss if I, what am I doing this for? Well, I'm trying to, with my minimal channel, is that trying to spread the message of, hey, by the way, there are important issues, and we need to start paying attention to them before it's too late. And I have a very good friend of mine who has 2 children, and I told him as a joke once. I said, you're very selfish. And he goes, why is that? He goes, well, I mean, here you are complaining about what's happening in life, and you make kids. And he goes, well, if I have to go down, so will they. And basically, as a joke, and but he says that what do we do? Do we stop propagating, and because we have a disastrous future? But he's right. I mean, but if you're going to fight for a future, we're going to have to do it together. I mean, all this left and right nonsense is basically meant to basically divide us and make us the enemy. Well, the real enemy are the ones that are making us believe this way. And
It's so funny
as long as we can have young men like you, Eric and Reed, and reach a bigger audience and delve into the issues while being a human and doing so, that's why I'm behind you guys and supporting you guys full. And we need more people like you guys out there.
Eric, you remember at the press club with Ryan Dawson? Very, very liberal leaning the whole thing was. And I remember seeing how well Eric just mixed with everyone. And I also got to know Eric on the Tulsi campaign. And so I saw how he mixed with those people. Like Eric he's a chameleon. Like he can just fit in with any group, like if it's the Trump people, the Liberty people, the liberals, like whatever, like it's so impressive. That's what I've really come to admire about him. Like I don't know, like you have the things that you care about. And I mean, it's kind of it's what Ron Paul talks about, building coalitions on single issues, but you're very good at that. But you're also not awkward in any group. Like you can just, how to, how to function in each one. It's really interesting to watch. But
thank you, Reed. I'm going to be looking for engagement rings for Texas now.
Yeah. How much of that is like your ability to see the comedy in things shows you the absurdity in everything, and so you don't get like too attached.
That's really succinct and brilliant way to put it, Tommy. Yeah, I've always been that way. But what has solidified my disposition and how I am with people and others is it was losing my father to cancer over 5 months. I had the misfortune of seeing him pass away over the course of 5 months, knowing he got a terminal cancer prognosis. So that you go through something like that totally changes who you are. It's the worst thing I've ever gone through in my life personally. So when I come across somebody who you don't know what kind of day they're having, you don't know what they are experiencing in their day-to-day life, what hardships they face. They could have a sick father in a bed dying of cancer, or someone they love or care about. So I just try to approach people with empathy and compassion, and if you don't give me a reason, not to treat you that way, that's my default.
Yeah.
That's just kind of always been my default. And the comedy part is everything is just so absurd. Like it's just crazy. It's our world is so crazy. And it's so fucked up that when someone is just kind to another person with no agenda and for no reason, people give you a side eye. Like, what's this all about? Like, why are you doing this? What can you get out of that person? Mm-hmm. So, I just try to do that. And I appreciate you picking up on that, Reed, and saying that. And I've kind of, Mike and I have always been that way. And in high school, we were the same way. We got along with people from all the cliche groups, the jocks, the goths, the preppies, the athletes, the nerds, the artists, because Mike and I had a a finger in every pie. Like we had a little something going on in each one of those worlds, you know? So
Yeah.
it's just good to be rounded with a lot of things and a lot of interests. So, and when you boil it down to we are all just people here on this weird thing called Earth, trying to go about our lives and be happy and live a fulfilled life and do things that are important to us, see people that we love and care about. I've just found the disposition to be kind and humorous has made my experience a lot more fulfilling and enriching and fun overall.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot more. It's more convincing too, because a lot of times we forget that not everybody is neck deep in all of these topics like we are, and so one of the things I try to make sure I do is to listen to normies, so to speak. And a lot of people say that as like a pejorative, but I don't think it's a pejorative. I just, these are just average people. They're just trying to live their lives.
Mhm.
And most of the people I work with and read, most people you would run into on the road are, they're just average people trying to live their life, trying to do the best. And they get mad at all these politics and they're trying to figure things out and they don't understand and they don't tie together how all these things fit together. So sometimes you just have to listen to them and to kind of see things from their point of view, because they're not looking deep into it, you know, and you got to kind of take a step back, because you're not going to be able to come. I've tried to explain this to libertarians, and this is one of my arguments with libertarians is that, look, man, like I understand you're 20 years old and you've read everything Rothbard ever wrote. Like I get it. Like I'm not mad at you for it. But I know 50-year-olds who've never heard of Rothbard.
Right.
Like insulting them is not the way to win them to your side. So it's one of those things. And I think by unleashing and like interacting in a comedic fashion like you do, Eric, you could actually reach a lot more people than any of those guys ever could.
I think I have found it hard to otherize people because, you know, especially when I was working on power lines and then when I worked at a lumber yard before that, like you got people of all sorts of different political backgrounds. And then especially when I was roofing in Colorado, I was working with people from Somalia, from, you know, from Burma, from Guatemala, Mexico, all over the US, like tons of different people. And a lot of us didn't even speak the same language. You know, I speak Spanish sort of well, at least when it comes to roofing, because I got the vocabulary. But there were people like speaking Thai and French and Swahili, and like we're all trying to just get something done together. But the political or cultural or even language barriers kind of fall away once you start working, because you know what you're supposed to do and you know what the task at hand is, and you just got to get the job done. And so it makes it a lot harder to just think of people in a little box, because you've worked with them on that roof and you've heard some of their stories and you know what their life is like. So, and then traveling all over the country, just like you have too, Tommy, like meeting people in California or like even in like LA or some really shit lib city, and you meet someone at the port and you have a fun conversation with them that would be just like a conversation you'd have with someone in your hometown or whatever. Like it just makes you realize that all these lines we draw aren't real, you know. They're like, we're all people and we're all a lot more similar than we are different. So I think that's just made it hard for me to think so statically about everybody, I guess.
Yeah. And then trying to understand the other side of the argument too. Like I'm kind of like hesitant to bring this up, but I brought up, I tweeted out today that parents should have a live stream inside children's classrooms. Like, I think that's pretty, upfront, and, why not? Why shouldn't parents have that knowledge of what's being taught to their children in the classroom? And somebody said that I was wrong and that there should be no government schools. And I'm like, who said anything about government schools? And he goes, I did. And I was like, so how does that make me wrong? like, I didn't mention government schools at all. I was just saying parents like need to take more of a hands-on approach to their children's education. That's all I'm saying. And so that attitude, that purity test, when something like that is going, that has run away a lot of good libertarians.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are still liberty minded, but are like, I'm not going to put up with this nonsense, that want nothing to do with libertarians because of that mindset of purity. And it's like, you gotta, at some point, I mean, I'm in my 40s, so I've seen a lot of life and I understand a lot about life that maybe somebody in their 20s doesn't understand. It's you kind of have to step back every once in a while and admit how things are versus how you'd like them to be. And you have to address what is, not what you would like. It's that ought versus is argument, and it gets really old.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah,
very exhausting.
Especially when you live in a time like we live in now. It's like your fantasy land, it doesn't mean anything. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah, it's not very practical.
Yeah. Well, and my question will be for the three of you then, because I think I've raised this issue once before with some of you. But I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Now, I'm new to the libertarian scene, and one thing I noticed years ago was when Ron Paul was running for president, was that he ran on the premise of anti-war. And so I'm starting to see a little bit of a fracture, like a sectarian divide within the libertarian community. And I want to get your opinions on the following question: is that, for me, I think the unifying effort for libertarian community is anti-war. And that, do you think in the future that if we just concentrated on the global issues that affect the larger community, not just domestic here in the States, but on the larger community as a whole, which do affect here in the States, that they need to run on the anti-war campaign? Because we could see that there are going to be conflicts in the future. Because if my assumption is right, that the Republicans win the House and Senate and they win the presidency, is that the future on the horizon looks bad for two countries, China and Iran. Both are enemies of the right wing. I mean, not the classic conservatives, but the extremists of the right wing.
Yeah.
So would it be not in the best interest of the Libertarian Committee right now to basically abscond from the smaller domestic divisive issues for now?
The bullshit.
What could unite them?
Yeah, this is how I first got my name in the libertarian community, because I was making that point that, if we're arguing about intellectual property laws or, some obscure thing like that's a waste of time when we've got these really big economic issues and especially war. But yeah, I think war is kind of a transcendent issue. Like you can bring people to your cause who aren't even necessarily libertarians. Like, I supported Tulsi, and she's not a libertarian, but it was because of the war thing. That was the most important thing. So, if the libertarian community is really focusing on war, it'll attract people who are conservative or who are progressive or whatever, who really care about that. So, and then all the other, war is kind of the issue that affects everything else. Like if you want to talk about police brutality, you have all these people who went over to Afghanistan and Iraq and came back and ended up becoming police officers, and they've been trained to kill people, and they have PTSD, and all these weapons from the wars we've been fighting get sent to the police departments all across the United States. If you want to talk about healthcare, any of these issues, like our monetary policy, it's all tied back to the wars. So it's kind of the most important issue. So yeah, I think you're right, Adam. I don't think like I have had pretty good luck reaching out to people on both sides of the aisle, and I'm certainly not shy about what my views are on things. I mean, people would know what I think about mostly everything, but I'm just not. I don't know, and it's weird because I do mock the right and the left a lot, but somehow it kind of goes beyond mocking the people. It's more just like the ridiculousness of the right and left movements, and the people don't seem pushed away. So I don't know. That's kind of how I go about it. And yeah, war I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm with you, Adam. That's a driving force. It's been a driving force in every candidate I've supported for president, at least since 2004 was the first election I was old enough to cast a vote for. And I voted for John Kerry because I believe there was a difference between him and W. Bush, because Kerry was at least posturing that Iraq was a mistake and we got to get out and it's a disaster. But, I really think that people can unite under the anti-war umbrella, and that war does spill into every other aspect of our lives. We have an entire generation of young Americans who were forever damaged by what they had to do over in the Middle East. And, when they come home, we'll throw them a nice parade and put a medal on them and then just kind of throw them out in the garbage. That's what our system does to them. And that's a byproduct of war. So, when people hear about someone they may have grown up with or went to school with who served and had to go over to Iraq or Afghanistan and do unspeakable things and then come back and get addicted to drugs, it totally altered the course of this person's life. I know that they chose to go over there and do it, but part of that was the war propaganda and the bill of goods they were sold about this being a noble effort, about it being something that you should be willing to sacrifice your life for. So if we can get more and more people to see that clearly, which is demonstrated through your work and stuff that Reed talks about and Tommy and myself, more people can get outraged about it and put aside the stupid bullshit culture wars, the stupid Coke and Pepsi left and right nonsense that is part of the libertarian movement too, because they argue about stupid shit. And Reed will attest to this. I don't ever get into the weeds of any of that crap. I mock it and make fun of it with Reed because I am so focused on foreign policy and on the big picture stuff. That is really how I view our whole planet, is that there's a predator class, small group predator class of people, and war is their game, and they put us all in a meat grinder and have us fight with each other while the record profits continue to soar, and the Pentagon is, approaching $1 trillion for a defense budget. So,
Eric, what do you think about the Bordertarian, Lolbert, Meekock, Hoppians?
I mean, they're, it's hard to say because they could be Bordertarian and they could be Meekock, but they also could be Meeguac, like guacamole. We don't really know, and they could be Rothbardian, but it's not 100% sure. It could be Mothbardian. But if you just fixate on that stuff that keeps people divided and fighting with each other, how are we going to have a meaningful anti-war movement in this country?
I have a different take. All right, so here's the way I look at it. Yeah, y'all have to remember where I come from. Scott Horton is one of my best friends. I'm always in communication with Patrick McFarland, Kyle Anzalone. Like, these are guys I deal with regularly because I'm at the Libertarian Institute. I think the people's taste for war is a direct result of culture, and that in order for those in the elites to move the people to war, they have to move the culture in that direction. You look at all the virtue signaling with Ukrainian flags. You look at all the virtue signaling with Israeli flags, the anti-BDS stance. This is all a cultural issue, and you have to move the culture in order to move the people to war. Adam, have you ever read, we were talking about it before you jumped on. It's a book I've been really diving deep into. It's called The Next Million Years by Charles Galton Darwin. Have you read that?
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Adam.
I have not.
Okay. Have you read The Grand Chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski?
Yes.
Okay. So if you read The Grand Chessboard, he's attacking the geopolitics of the world through a cultural lens, right? So he's feeding, like, the whole point of the book, The Grand Chessboard, was to give college educated students the mental ammunition for geopolitics, right? So he's not just going after the geopolitics. He's introducing the geopolitics to the culture that is going to shape the next generation. And so whenever I start reading things like this, and I'm looking at not only the words being said, but the objectives at hand, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, they're utilizing culture. They're taking the pro-war stance and they're inserting it into culture. And how are they doing that? And so, as far as I'm concerned, fighting the culture war is ridiculous as it seems sometimes, because a lot of it is clown world, but you have to combat 2 + 2 = 5 in order to get to peace equals prosperity.
Yeah, I certainly see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I have found that, you know, everyone's good at messaging to a different group of people, and like if Scott Horton started jumping on the culture war train, I don't think it would work that well for him, you know, like, because he's that type of guy that is just kind of wired for just throwing hot fire out there, you know, just like straight facts.
He's an
stuff.
information guy. Yeah, for sure.
So some people latch onto that. But you're right. Some people that doesn't work with. Some people, you got to get them to care about the transgender swim team, because that's what they're just naturally going to care about. And then you can maybe eventually weaponize that to get them to care about something else.
I did a podcast. I think it was in 2019. I released this podcast. It was one of my first solo episodes, and I called it "Now It's Personal." And my son, who was about to graduate high school, was talking about joining the Marines. Now, we were in the middle of Afghanistan during this time. I've already, at this time, I already know Scott Horton. I'm already good friends with Matthew Ho, you know, like, and I'm listening to my son and I'm telling him, like, you got to be careful for this. You got to be careful for that. Now, if I wouldn't have had that conversation with him from a cultural standpoint and from the standpoint of this is what you have to expect for yourself and for your life, and culturally what it means for your future. Now, it's not a society-wide culture. This is just the culture of him as a human being. And then sending him some anti-war books and saying, hey, listen to this. This is a guy who was in Vietnam, who was involved in Vietnam, and this is what Vietnam did to this man. That my son very well may be in the Marines at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he didn't come out and say the conversation and the information you exchanged with me made a difference, but he did not join the Marines.
Yeah.
And so I created a culture there with him, right? Like, when people talk about culture, they're thinking about this whole broad, you know, social contract type thing. I'm not talking that. I'm talking, you have to build this interrelational kind of aspect to where you're able to view what's right and wrong and the morality of right and wrong. And you have to start it at a micro level and not at the macro level for people to understand what's happening.
Yeah, I think humor, like how Eric does things, humor is part of culture, right? So if he can do this funny Trump stand-up comedian show, you know, people might just be drawn to that. And then from there, you know, they can start paying attention. I actually got a message from someone today, and I asked them if I could post it on Twitter, and they said yes, so I did. And he was basically telling me the way I first found out about you was you just making fun of January 6th and, you know, making a mockery of it instead of acting like it's an insurrection or whatever. And then I found your show, and then I found Dave Smith, Scott Horton, Ryan Dawson, you know, all these other people. And I don't know, like, because when I first had Twitter, I was like Justin Amash. I was just posting these threads about the minimum wage or, you know, police brutality, you know, and I was getting no interaction. Now, you know, I'll post name a bigger upgrade with a picture of Meghan McCain and John McCain, and then Meghan McCain over John McCain's casket, and they'll get thousands of likes, and people will be like, holy shit. And so then they'll think that's hilarious and they'll follow me. And then I'll post a clip from an episode I just did with whoever. Then they'll go watch it. So yeah, I mean, I usually humor or, you know,
You're engaging in culture.
Williamson or something. Yeah, sure. You're engaging in a cultural aspect that they can understand, that they can relate to you.
Right.
With, and then you can draw them in. So
yeah, that is a good way to look at it, Tommy. And you're right. I mean, that is what I try to do. A lot of it's psychology. When I'm dealing with people or I'm performing for an audience, I'm also kind of like a psychologist up there. I'm responding to what they're giving to me and what they want to hear. And I'm thinking in my brain, okay, how can I put, it's like a chef cooking you a nice meal. You know, they're giving you the ingredients for the ultimate presentation of a meal that they're going to want. So for me, that's like information, it's entertainment, it's stuff to think about. So when I'm meeting someone or performing for a crowd, you know, I think about how could I talk about the fact that Bill Clinton flew on a private jet 26 times that we know of to an island with young children with a known pedophile. So who am I in front of right now? Oh, I'm in front of Trump people, and I'm up here dressed as Trump. So I'll weaponize their hatred of the Clintons to present them with an actual fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something that is like, we got Bill Clinton. You wouldn't believe this. He's on a jet with Jeffrey Epstein, ditched his Secret Service detail. He's in the logs 26 times that we know of. Okay. It could be a lot more than that. And you just do that. And that gets wheels turning in people's head. And they're like, holy shit, man, that's crazy. So then after the show, maybe they'll come up to me and ask me about that, or they'll go home later that night and they'll start looking into that shit. So you got to play to your audience, and you can't, when I genuinely go after people or attack people, I like to punch up, man. It's so easy to fucking punch down on people and shit over people, and you can get a superiority complex, and I know more than this person, and because they don't know it, I'm just going to attack them and come at them. Like you mentioned normies, like you got to have empathy for people who don't know about this stuff or who aren't aware of the stuff you know about. So my way of trying to connect it with them, you're absolutely right about culture. You gotta put it in a package that's digestible for them, and we'll make them think.
My favorite new thing that I've been doing the last few months is the whole. You come up with some bullshit story and then you say, go Google blah, 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 blah to find out more. So like today I said in 2012, the Obama administration was trying to protect the American sycamore tree from some invasive beetles that originate in Syria. And so then I said, go Google Obama Operation Timber Sycamore Syria to find out more, stuff like that. So then people would go look it up and they're like, whoa, like what?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. I think maybe sometimes we're not aware of how much we're engaging in the culture and how much we're shaping the culture by being alternative media. But I honestly believe that the culture is the most important thing, because you have to change the culture from that of one that is, wanting to go to war to one that isn't. And you have to engage and touch them in a way that is different than what everybody else is doing. And I think I'm not saying that I know for a fact that Eric does that. I know for a fact that Reed does that. I think that sometimes we're unaware that's what we're doing.
Yeah, well, a lot of it too is meeting people where they're at and then trying to find an opening. And that's where you can reach people, and open their eyes to things.
Another thing I saw once is go ahead, Eric. Finish that.
No, I was just saying, you can have an impact there.
Yeah. What I noticed is sometimes if you're just consistent and people notice like, okay, this guy doesn't have a political side that he sticks with. He just has things he believes in, and he's always going to stand on that. So I remember in 2020, I was so mad at the Republicans in 2020 because they were supposed to stand up to the Democrats with all the spending and lockdowns and everything that took place, and they didn't. So I was just like, fuck the I was just trashing them, and I was just trashing Trump nonstop. But then the end of 2020, that COVID relief bill came out that was sending, billions to Sudan and Egypt and Israel and all these special interest groups or whatever. And Trump, I mean, he did cave eventually, but initially he actually stood up to it and said, no, I'm not signing this. Like, take it back, get all the pork out of it, show me a clean bill. And so I had been, eviscerating him for all the stupid shit he'd been doing in 2020. And then when he did that, I put a video out like praising him, saying like, this is so great. I can't believe he's doing this, but he is. And I was like, everyone get on the phone and call your representative, call your senator, tell them to back President Trump on not signing this bill. Tell them that he's right and we can't do this. And I had a lot of Trump supporting friends and listeners who watched that. And they're like, wow, okay, well, Reed is actually... And then when Trump didn't sign the NDAA, that was another time I was like, yes. Yeah. It was kind of for dumb reasons. It was the whole Section 230 thing. But I was still like, I don't care. He's right to not sign this, And then Trump ended up caving and signing the bill. And a lot of people that I know, that was like a turning point for them because they saw that I was standing on principle and actually something I believed in. And then they saw that Trump wasn't doing that. And that really like woke a lot of them up. Like a lot of people who listen to me who used to be Trump supporters, they'll cite that moment as the time that they really realized what was going on. So I think you can also influence people, even if they strongly disagree with you at first, just by showing them that you mean what you say and you actually stand for something more than just a letter next to your name or whatever. And then I'm also like really willing to criticize libertarians too. Like when, whenever some libertarian says some awful thing that I don't agree with, I'll be like, no. And I'm not just going to, agree with them because they're a libertarian or whatever. So
we're part of a tribe.
Yeah, I think that really means a lot to people. If you show them you have, some level of integrity, then they'll listen to you.
People are going to wonder why you're so steadfast in your convictions and why you've been saying the same shit you've been saying year after year. I mean, when the Epstein stuff broke, man, I had people from high school messaging me who I hadn't talked to in years. And they were like, holy shit, man, I used to think that you were absolutely nuts, the stuff you talked about in high school. But now more and more as time is passing, stuff with 9/11, stuff with the wars, revelations from WikiLeaks, the Epstein thing. You and your brother actually were not insane. You guys had the courage and the guts to speak honestly about this shit. Yeah. And it was like uncomfortable and not a lot of people were ready to hear it, but I'm ready to hear it now. So, it's nice to get those conversations. But you're absolutely right, Reed, man. When you take a hard stand, and you stand up for something that you believe in and you know to be right and you've researched it and you're passionate about it and it's true and it's right, people will come around.
Yeah. And then Adam, with you, like you're not in a movement at all. You're like, that's what I really like about you. You're kind of a lone wolf. Like you and DJ Thermal Detonator team up on a lot of stuff, but you're mostly like doing all your own stuff. And so you don't have anything holding you back. So when you say something, people know, oh, he's done the research and he knows what he's talking about.
Dude, they're Batman and Robin of 9/11 truth. the Dark Knight and the Boy Wonder, And Adam's the Dark Knight simply because he's 6'10".
Yeah.
I think what helps in that is because many years ago when I studied theology, is that I was an atheist, but I became an anti-theist because I gravitated to people that thought like me and spoke like me. But what I became was what I despised, was that I became an extremist on the other side. It was an atheist who was biblically literate. I remember this well. It was 2004, who basically said to me, your shtick is getting old. And I really respected him. I remember his name was Lenny. And for him to say that about me, I said, we're on the same side. Why would he say that? I said, I really like this guy. Thankfully, I said, I must be doing something wrong. And I didn't say, well, the hell with him. I didn't revert. I wanted to know why did he come out like that? And it took a lot of I guess I hate to use that term soul searching, but soul searching in that I stood away from the internet for a year, and it basically changed my whole life, because what I did was I realized that what I was doing was basically becoming the very people I hated, which was the extremist in thought, in belief, in the human
Mm.
construct.
You're
And so,
becoming almost religious. You're becoming religious and you're
right,
anti-theism.
like that, I was a fervent anti-theist. I
Yeah.
followed the works of Christopher Hitchens. In
Yeah.
fact, I have more Christopher Hitchens than anybody in the world on YouTube, but I didn't use Adam Fitzgerald, my real name. So what I did was I took off a year from the internet, and I self-reflected, and I said, I want to know what made me think that way, so I would never do it again. And so I decided to make a change in my life, and I said, whatever else I ever study, I will never ever uh, study it with the preconceived bias mindset. And so, in
Mm.
order to do that, I need to get rid of the human applications or whatever. Well, I didn't vote, so I wasn't very political. I don't believe in racism, where I don't think in terms of people as colors. And one thing I was basically almost like religious in my atheism. And so I decided to do away with the catechism, the schisms, the human constructs that are taught to us. And they're learned applications. You don't want born a racist. You aren't born a political ideology or a religious affiliation. You're taught these ideals. And so I studied philosophy. And because I studied psychology at the City University of New York, I was interested in geopolitics and fundamentalism itself. And when I started 9/11 in 2006, I went in with a blank slate, and I didn't have any biases whatsoever. What a real like investigator would do when they go to a crime scene, they don't go there and say, "Oh, I know what didn't happen." Instead, he goes there and investigates what the evidence at hand. And if it leads him down a road that he's unfamiliar or uncomfortable with, well, guess what? That's the truth, right? That's what he has to do as a real investigator. And that's what we have to do in whatever we study and research. But as long as we have divisive human issues of sexism and politics and religion and racism embedded in us, we're only going to look at and listen to people that agree with our worldviews. And I think as long as that exists, we will never truly evolve to the human community that we can be. Because look at how great achievements we have made when it comes to technology. We've gone above and beyond in evolution there. I think that we have basically come at a standstill, I think, when it comes to the evolution of the mind. And I think this is what needs to happen next. And I think the very few philosophers like the late Jiddu Krishnamurti, who basically said one time that the radical revolution won't happen in the streets. It has to happen within each and every person. And in order to do that, we have to get away from the divisive issues that the powers, the government, and the intelligence agencies actually work on to keep you divided, keep you afraid, and keep you warring with each other. Because when you get rid of those divisive issues, you will look at the very same people who facilitated that line of thought and made you think that way in the first place. And that's them. It's a great story years ago that was written by Chris Hedges, where he says that when they were outside the White House, Richard Nixon was the president, and Henry Kissinger was standing next to him, and Nixon was turned to Kissinger and said, "Henry, they're going to break through the gates and get us." Well, that's exactly where we want the powers that be at be. We want them to think that way, and we had that chance, but it failed on January 6th because we went there with the radical fundamentalists of a stupid far right leaning. It could have been far left, but they were extremists and they didn't represent the people. But if we went there as a human community and say we went there because, oh, they gave us a shitty $1,600 stimulus check, well, guess what? You would have had the left, the right, and the center on your side because it affected all of us. We should have went January 6th as a human community, not as a divisive, radical, political wing.
I remember thinking that
All of us.
exact thing during 2020 when, there were protests over police brutality. They were literally like 2 weeks after there had been a protest at the Michigan state capitol against the lockdowns that Whitmer was enforcing. And those two sides hated each other. I remember thinking, this is so ironic. Like, you guys both hate the same thing. You hate the government, being oppressive to you, basically. But you hate each other. And it's because of what you're talking about, Adam. Like they use right, left, or whatever to just cause everybody to hate each other. And then the protests and over the police brutality devolved into mayhem, obviously. But initially, I think there were a lot of people that were actually upset about what had happened and about police brutality in general. And but you're right. Like, there's just no way to get people to go like, hey, there's a central problem here. It's like the, you had the Tea Party movement and the Occupy Wall Street movement, and they're kind of both upset about the same thing. So what do? You throw identity politics into the mix to, distract the left wingers, and then the right wingers, you throw the whole birth certificate or radical Islamic extremism.
Your mic going out there, Reed?
Oh, can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
I must have been getting too far away from it. But it's either, the right wingers and the left wingers, they get distracted by this cultural bullshit. And then the central problem never goes away, or never gets attacked, never gets focused on. And then if you ever have someone who ends up uniting right and left, like Ron Paul kind of did, or like Tulsi Gabbard kind of did, then they're taken out, like they're instantly vilified. So
yeah, you're a Russian asset.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. There's just so many things in place to keep people divided and dumbed down and scared and distracted and confused. A lot of confusion out there. And then by the time you can try to get through to certain people, it's on to the next thing, So,
well, let me ask you guys this, because this is something I've been saying for probably a couple of months now that I've never really ran by anybody. I just kind of started thinking it myself.
This is the place to drop it.
Yeah, this is where I'm going with it.
Yeah,
because if nothing else, Eric will make me laugh about it. He'll be like, "You're so fucking stupid." But all right. So from the 20s to the 70s, the eugenicists had introduced a mandated sterilization program. Everybody know about that? Am I talking about things that y'all don't know about?
Mandated.
Wasn't there a name for this program?
I don't remember the name of the program, but I know in many states it ran for over 50 years. There was propaganda that went around. They did movies where they were like showing little girls, like 13, 14-year-old little girls, and a nurse talking to her saying, "We're going to sterilize you because your parents have just continued to spread this gene that is just inferior to all other genes." And so it's like the sacrifice that was supposed to take place. And this went on for many years. And I think Indiana was the state that had it in place longer than any other state, right? But it was this forced sterilization. If you ask me, when you start looking at who was pushing that agenda, and you look at who's pushing the transgenderism agenda, they're just a new type of eugenicist. And they're just saying, okay, we're just going to have parents voluntarily sterilize their kids.
That's interesting. Dude, I wouldn't be surprised. And you have to wonder about the whole transgender thing, man. They've amped that thing up to 1,000%.
Exactly. Like, why do you have to crank it up so much? Why do you have to come after my kids when you can do your own thing with your own kids? Like, what difference do my kids have on your ability to say that you're now Leah Thomas and beat women at fucking swimming?
So you're saying, Tommy, this is just part of an agenda, an extension of this forced sterilization, but it's done in a way of diversity and inclusion.
Now it's voluntary.
And voluntarily, and we have to all go along with it, because if you don't, it's weaponized and you're a bigot.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the thing with the transgender stuff is there's no historical precedent for it. Like, you know, when right wingers are trying to say this is because we legalized gay marriage, and I think that's ridiculous. Like the transgender thing is very different from the gay rights thing because there's plenty of historical precedents for homosexuality. Like that's nothing new. But
Well, Camille Paglia would disagree with you because Camille Paglia says that every society, when it's on its downturn and it starts having a problem with gender.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
No, I'm not
ignorant,
saying
but-
that to argue with you. I'm just saying like that's something to look at because
I thought you were going to say it starts having a lot of butt sex when the empire is collapsing.
fuck it, I'm down.
If I'm correct, I think the Rockefellers Institute was behind the that eugenicist movement in the 20s.
That was my thinking, Adam, too. I immediately thought of the Rockefellers.
Yep.
Those
Well, and
motherfuckers.
that's where Hitler got his ideas for gassing Jews was the eugenicist movement here in America from the progressives. Way to go, progressives.
Very progressive.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yeah.
progressives.
It's an agenda. I mean, I watch. Have you guys watched the KGB dude who defected, Yuri Besmanoff?
Oh yes.
Have you heard of him, Adam?
Yes.
Yeah, you know about him. So I mean, I'll just lay out my view of how to explain Yuri Besmanoff. He gave a bunch of these interviews to G. Edward Griffin in the 80s.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Based KGB defector, and he came over, I think, through Canada and defected, and then spoke about subversion of culture, of society, of civilization.
Didn't he do didn't he do a big like 60 Minutes interview or something like that where he was like saying this is what America has to look forward to? Or
it may have been with 60 Minutes. I mean, he did a lot of big interviews. He did a lot of press in Canada and the US. And his central thesis was that the fault lines of gender, of race, of identity politics, sexual politics are going to really be the undoing of civilization in American society. And it's going to be like 3 decades. It's going to be 25, 30 years. So when you fast forward from when Besmanoff was saying all of this to looking at the last, I mean, the tranny stuff, man, really has been amped up. What do you guys think? The last 5-10 years? Maybe
5, dude,
3
5.
3 to 5
Like,
years?
it's been less than 5 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way it used to be was like, you know, a few people did it and it was like, okay, whatever. And, you know, like, I don't care. It's your body. But
like
now it's like,
fucking billboards and award shows and movies
ridiculous.
and you're fucking, it's insanity. So at first, you know, you could maybe brush Besmanoff off, but when you start to look at where things are going, I mean, what are your thoughts on him, Adam?
There's always a little bit of truth and a little bit of speculation in everything. But I would think that if you want to keep a people always divided upon, the constructs of human applications, it'll also help if you can teach a person to lose themselves as well and question what they are. Because as long as you don't have an identity of who you are, you will lose the ability to communicate with your fellow man. And I think that's another thing that is often often forgotten about what's happening in the last, 20 years with the advent of the technological age with the internet, is that we don't have much in the way of children going outside and playing stickball or physical sports, talking or hanging out anymore. What we do have now is this like insular mentality of staying in and almost brainwashed to, believe that, they could be whatever they want if they just say who they are. And this losing identity of the self is basically how you could control or manipulate a society in general. And as long as you got the media, and as long as you got the internet, where you can be awash in disinformation, as well as subjugating the rational voices from ever having a voice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can basically make a person believe whatever they want, whether it's a a he, she, or a toaster or a dinosaur. I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, this is the way, and we laugh about it now, but it's a horrifying reality because
Oh yeah.
if we had the internet back in, say, the Weimar Republic, can you imagine what the Nazis would have done? They wouldn't have.
Yeah, a non-binary brontosaurus. No, it's true, man. It has been amped up tenfold.
Well, there's a type of transhumanism to this, too, right? So, like, there's been all this talk over the last few years about the ushering in of transhumanism. Even Elon Musk is talking about, this microchip in people's heads, and so why not get used to not identifying as anything human?
Yeah.
And then it's easier to move you along this path of being part computer, part human.
The Borg, joining up with morphing into the Borg.
Yeah, I think what's scary is, I like what we were talking about earlier with the division amongst classes and cultures. Like the division is what's dangerous when the establishment weaponizes it, like with the Jews in Germany in the 30s and 40s or whatever. Like that's when it's bad. But I don't think that means culture or cultural identity in itself is bad. Like I think that actually is what makes us all interesting. I mean, some cultures are just bad, but a lot of it, like if you're Christian or Jewish or atheist or you're Mexican or Irish or, like all that diversity of, culture and background, I think is interesting. And I think they do want to wipe that away. They want to wipe away, like there's two ways they could do it. They can like weaponize that against, a certain ethnicity or whatever. They can like use it against the Irish or the Italians or whatever. But the other way is by just getting rid of it and trying to completely destroy any identity you have at all. Like Adam was saying, it seems like those are the two directions they go in. So
why do you think it has been for decades, these elites, these thinkers have been writing about population control? Do you think there's anything to that? Or do you think that's just like some fantasy they have in their head?
It's definitely got to be part of an agenda. I mean, Kissinger was on about it in the 70s, talking about it.
And they were writing about it before that. I mean,
it's been part of. You talked about Huxley and.
Well, I've been reading, like I said, this Galton Darwin. And we're talking about in the 50s. He's writing about Malthusianism and population control, and it just makes me wonder. Like it's like, okay, are we all targeting the wrong things? Are we looking at? Because I've come to the conclusion that liberalism in of itself is totalitarian. And what they did is they took this creed, this liberal creed from the Enlightenment. They took and they kind of immersed the idea of Edward Bernays propaganda into it, and they figured out a way to construct the world around them the way they want it without firing a shot. And it's only those in the East that are resistant enough to where they have to send the military in to actually do these operations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, is it? I said it the other day on Twitter. It's like, it's not a conspiracy theory to think that all libertarians read the same books, have very similar objectives in mind, and think similarly. Why is it a conspiracy theory to think that elites do the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, it's part of the globalist playbook. And hey, I will say, man, you go through the airport at LaGuardia, you might kind of err on the side of population control. Let's fucking shave off 4 million of these heads. I got a plane to catch. Yeah, no, they do fixate on it. They certainly fixated on it. And why does Bill Gates fuck around with vaccines in Africa? You know, what is that all about?
Wasn't there a whole ordeal with him and malaria vaccines or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, when you dig a little into Gates, I mean, yeah, he's over there for altruistic reasons. We know that. He cares. He definitely cares.
Yeah.
He's not doing it. There's nothing nefarious about any of that. You know, what's going
Well,
on?
is it so far-fetched to believe that there are people who are willing to commit mass genocide, even in the face of a lie? I mean, for example, a good example of this would be the Iraq War after 9/11. Whereas we lied to get into a country which had no links to any of the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. And then we ended up killing approximately 1.3 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And we make a big deal about, the deaths of what's happening in Ukraine. But at the same time, look at what we have done just in 20 years and just in the Middle East. I'm not even counting what we did in Central America in the 70s and 80s. But it's not, as Tommy would say, it's not a conspiracy theory to think that there are people who are willing to commit mass murder on such an egregious scale for nothing more than to be a chess piece for geopolitics and strategic politics in whatever part of the world that we feel that we should get involved with.
Yeah. If there's how I would say it, if there's a Jeffrey Dahmer and there's an Elon Musk, what makes you think there's not something in between?
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking about psychology now. So what's the fine line between empathy and apathy? Is it a fine line, or is it a very noticeable line?
Empathy and apathy?
Yes.
I would think empathy and apathy are very noticeable. That's my personal opinion. I mean,
but to switch, for example, I study La Cosa Nostra, Italian organized crime, and I'm fascinated by it because some of these notable killers, like Tommy,
don't give away all my secrets.
well, we have killers in the mafia that basically have empathy when it comes to the family. They're very family oriented, but at the same time, in a mere snap of the finger, they can actually kill somebody with an ice pick between the base of the neck for nothing more than because he owed him a dime or a quarter. So as you can see, that my quandary is what is it about the human mind that can jump from empathy and apathy in just without a thought?
Yeah.
And so I'm talking about real like sociopaths. So in other words, people in positions of power.
We all have to realize that I think this was shown in that book, Ordinary Men. If you haven't read that, it's very much worth a read. I think that we discover that man not only has all its best attributes, but all its worst attributes, and that's every man. And I think Jordan Peterson would do this, where he would go through and he would say, 80% of you in this audience would say there's no way in the world that you would ever be a Nazi, and you are the exact ones that would be Nazis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the country over the last couple of years, like who ended up going along with everything and who was snitching their neighbors out to the police. And what you said there, Tommy, about it's every man, I've realized that, like when you watch, like, I don't know about other people, but when I watch a Holocaust movie, the most horrifying thing to me is that, like Reinhard Heydrich is a person. He's not a robot. He's not an alien. Like, he's a person. So
you could identify with him.
Yeah. Like there was some point where
Carl Jung wrote a lot about that too.
Yeah. Like there's just somewhere where you just decided to turn your conscience off and just
banality
start going down a certain road. And I've seen it in myself, like when I am ruthless to someone who doesn't
Oh,
necessarily deserve it,
yeah.
you know? And you go like, wow. And I mean, and I've been more careful about it for the last like 10 years, but I remember like when I was a kid, I was just a dick to my younger brother just for no reason. And it wouldn't even necessarily give me pleasure because I wouldn't feel good about it afterward, but I'd just be so mean to him. And you know, like it was just like, where does that come from? Like, why am I doing that? And it's just a switch you can turn on, and you can just shut off your conscience and shut off your empathy. And I mean, it's scary, and I think all of us are capable of doing it. And
You know, and
sometimes something will trigger it. You don't necessarily see that in yourself, but someone does the wrong thing to you or whatever. Like,
or your
I
family,
don't know.
your family.
Yeah.
Well, is it your environment, or is it a mixture of both things that are internally within all of us as human beings? You know, instinctively, or
That instinct. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
does that kick right in, man? Where it's like you got to make a split second decision here. It's going to be my family or this guy, you know, and you fucking hope to, whether it's God or whatever, even if you don't believe in anything, you're not in a position ever where you have to flick that switch. You know what I mean? Like, think about soldiers fighting in a war. They're home for the holidays to see their families, having a nice turkey dinner, and then the next week they're out in some base in the desert killing Arab kids.
Yeah.
Well, and you find this with like actual people that have like experienced true violence in their life, right? They're very much less likely to threaten somebody else. They're kind of let things roll off their shoulder, you know. And so maybe Adam's right. Maybe empathy and apathy are very a lot closer than I originally thought. Maybe it's easy to go from being empathetic to apathetic just by understanding that no matter how much you care, it doesn't matter.
There was, to make my point, you know, real clear, is that there was a test in the 1950s, I believe,
Okay.
called, and you probably have heard of it, the Milgram experiment,
Yeah.
where they, you know, there's this scientist who basically wanted to show that regular human beings can do horrible things if an authority figure tells them to. So, in other words, as long as the person doesn't think that he's doing it on his own, he's being told to, they'll continue to, you know, do a horrible act. So, what the test was basically surrounded on was that they had a person in another room, and between them was a wall, and that on the other side of that wall was a person who had a switchboard, and it was an electrical switchboard. And so was this guy who was dressed in a doctor's uniform to make him look, you know, like he's a doctor. And he told these people that were just walk-ins, and told them that each of these switches represent a bolt of electricity, and each one was higher than the rest. So there was 50 volts, then there was a 200 volts, and it was, you know, all the way up to like 400 volts, I think. And that, you know, it's pretty strong. And on the other side, unknown to the person involved with the test, is a guy who's in on it. You know, he knows what the test's about. So, but he doesn't see his face. All he can hear is hear him. And so he goes, you got to ask this guy questions. If he gets it wrong, you have to turn the switch, and you know that's electric shock. And the person says, "Oh, okay." And so he asks him a question. He goes, or he gives him I think it was like a multi choice question. And if they got it wrong, they shocked him. He told him 50 volts, and you hear the guy go, "Ouch!" And then if he just kept getting it wrong, it's almost like he went up to like 150 volts, and you could hear the guy really screaming. And he screamed, goes, "Oh, I want to get out of here. You know, this is hurting me." And what the test did was that a lot of these people that participated were basically from all walks of life and all different fields. And majority of them, I think it was like to Milgram, he said it was about 90 to 95% went on with the test, even though they knew that the other person on the other side was actually being injured. And what they did was, this is even more horrifying, is that they would ask the scientist, and it's Milgram himself, saying, "Hey, I don't think we should do this anymore." And the guy was basically telling him, "No, go on, it's okay." And one person basically kept saying that, the other guy's being hurt. And he goes, ignore it. Just keep going. And they did it anyway.
Yeah. Is that looking for the permission of authority to continue on. Right. And we're experiencing that right now. Right. Whereas there are people that have had their bank accounts shut down. There are all these things, and the authority figures, those in media, the politicians, say it's okay, so that citizens agree with these repercussions, right?
They're the authority figures that enforce the behavior. And it's okay for you to go along with this. And actually, you need to become part of the people who is engaging in this behavior because we're normalizing it.
Right.
So the lab coat figures are the media. They are the military industrial,
the managerial class.
The managerial class, exactly. And it's we're so beaten down by so many other things in our lives. Some people get to a point where some asshole on a screen blinking at them for 30 seconds, they just are transfixed on it, and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna put a needle in my arm, yeah, I'm gonna wear a chin diaper, yeah, I'm gonna go snitch on people who aren't exhibiting the acceptable behavior, yeah, I'm gonna put a Ukrainian flag in my window, yeah, I'm gonna do that. To do that, they're gonna get rewarded for it. Like
I'm gonna have a black block on my Twitter profile.
That helped. You know, when they did that, MLK came back to life. When that was the most amazing thing. I was joking to my brother today. I'm like, dude, we need to put an Azov battalion flag in our window and stand with Ukraine. We got to do that. It's amazing. Yeah, that is scary, Adam, and that is on a mass scale. It's scaled up, dude, and so weaponized, and people they don't even see it. It's so.
What makes us different, though?
I mean, we're retarded. The four of us.
Yeah,
I'm retarded. He's like, Joe, I gotta. I'm kind of retarded.
Wait. Adam's not retarded.
Yeah, Adam isn't. The other three.
He read 510 pages in 4 days.
This is Professor
not retarded.
Professor Fitzgerald, and we're three sorority brothers who are retarded.
Maybe the rest of us are retarded. I'll buy that.
What is the difference of us? Well, you and Reed, Tommy, you guys are out there every day, man, with people. You're out with real people. You're actually not behind a screen all day with your jobs.
Well, we're behind a windshield, so it's almost the same thing.
It's very similar. It's very little adjustment to make.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I can speak for myself. What's different about me? I mean,
y'all all look like roadkill to me.
I was fortunate to grow up with a father who had David Icke books on his nightstand that I saw when I was a kid, and I wanted to know what's my old man reading. David Icke, who's this guy? Reptilians and Rothschilds and Bilderbergers and Rockefellers and DuPont and Morgan. Who the fuck are these people? So I had that at a young age. I was exposed to that at a very young age, and I had a baseline of always questioning authority. I had a father that said, do not trust priests, do not trust politicians, do not trust the media, all this stuff. So you don't absorb, obviously you can't absorb all that when you're a 10-year-old kid, but if you've heard it on a consistent basis and you've seen behavior from your father that reinforces that adverse reaction to authoritarianism and towards groupthink, it has an effect on you. So it had a huge effect on my brother and I. So I am the way I am mostly because of my dad, and he has 5 brothers, my uncles, who are all super based and are all very similar in this line of thinking, questioning authority, being your own man, not going along with the herd. So a lot of that is the environment that I grew up in.
So you think it's a nurture thing? Adam, would you say it's a nurture thing?
I would say it's a certain variables at play. And if I can be bold and assume why you're different than the majority of the public is you put a human face on the other side of the screen. So in other words, like, Reed and Eric and Tommy, you can empathize with those that can't empathize. You can actually put yourself in someone's shoes and understand their mindset. Whereas people who are so invested into human constructs, as I mentioned previously, can't be able to, because they can't accept the fact that there are dissenting ideologies and opinions that fear them and scare them because of the differences involved. But the irony of it is that, and I think Reed touched on this earlier, was that we have the one common bond that actually makes us whole, is that we're human beings. And that's not enough for majority of the people in this world, because they want to feel like they're seclusive to a smaller group of people that is different than everybody else because it makes them special. But you are already special. You're born, and you're the winner of the sperm lottery, as I say. Whereas you out of millions of different sperm cells made it, and that you came from it. So you are different than everybody else, but you share a commonality, and that is you're a human being. And as long as, like I said, we continue to degrade each other because we believe differently from each other, we look different from each other, we'll never grow. And the very entities at play who cause this division, they're the ones who are benefiting from it. And so we need to realize that we're stronger, smarter, and bigger than what we are. And until we get to that, we're stuck in the repetitive motion that we are the enemy to ourselves, and we're not.
All this time, I thought it was because my mom was a redheaded coon ass, and it's all because I just had empathy. Imagine my disappointment.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same as Eric. I think, and I agree with a lot of what Adam said there too. I think we're huge products of our upbringing. And I think some things are wired in, but most, how you apply that wiring is mostly how you're brought up. Like I've always had
the nature nurture discussion is one of the more interesting discussions.
Yeah,
honestly, because I don't believe in a blank slate. Like
no,
I'm not a blank slate person, but I do have my thoughts on the nature nurture argument that are probably aren't accepted by most people.
Yeah, I think I'm wired in a way that everything has to be just so. Like that's just the way I've always been. I've always been pretty meticulous and anal about it, and that's why it was good at being a foreman, working on power lines and setting poles, because all those poles had to be perfectly in line. All the anchors had to have the right angle and be put in right in the right spot, and every resume I'd ever fill out or whatever had to be just so. That's just the way I am. But I think
so not like that. I'm like, fuck it, we'll figure it out.
You're very technically minded, Reed.
Yeah, but I think the
who cares? We'll get her done.
The empathy and the the caringness, the caring for everybody and realizing that everybody is a person. That comes from my parents. I recently posted a video on Twitter that my dad found from 2003 when I was 8, almost 9. I think it was in March of 2003. And we were all standing on the side of the road with these signs protesting the Iraq War. And the one that really sticks out to me today is Baghdad is someone's Sunapee. And Sunapee was the town we were living in. So there was always that, that stress on the fact that everybody's a person. Everybody has struggles and hopes and dreams and desires and failures just like you.
Right.
So never forget that, and I think that really stuck with me. So we'll have to do the nature nurture discussion sometime.
The nurturist capitalist.
Really, yeah, the nurturist capitalist.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
I do too, man. I wonder, like, if I were born in North Korea, how different would I be? Like, what would be the same? What would be different?
You'd be a truck driver for Rocket Man. Obviously, you would be. You'd still be a truck driver, but you'd be serving Rocket Man. Who's a good friend of mine. No, you do wonder about it, and I mean, Mike and I are twins, and us, Reed. We're very similar, in a lot, but we are also different. So,
yeah.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with how you grow up and what you're exposed to day in and day out, repetition. So when you have a kind of a based, renegade, self-employed father who doesn't suffer fools and bullshit, keep you on the straight and narrow, and always support you and love you and build you up and be there for you, that has an impact, man. It's the reason I'm sitting here today, for sure.
Can I borrow your dad?
Well, we
No,
got to
I'm just
resurrect
playing.
him.
I'm just playing. I'm just
gotta bring him
playing.
back.
My dad's amazing. I'm just
gotta reanimate him.
joking.
Oh, I know. Yeah, well, hey, you're kind of talking to my dad when you're talking to me, man. I try and
At least
carry,
part of them. I need to talk to Mike too, so I can get the other half.
Oh yeah, Mike's a fucking trip. But yeah, I try and keep those ethos going. Plus, my dad was a Newfie. He's from Newfoundland, Canada, where the Titanic sank, and that's a whole other breed of human being. They're some of the kindest, most generous, giving, weird, and funny people that I've ever encountered in my life. So
I've been up there, man. Are they the only ones that live half an hour off the rest of the clock?
Could be.
That was the weirdest thing about it, was they're on the half hour instead of the hour like everyone else is. And let's see, I went to Newfoundland. I went to I went all over the whole island. It was pretty nuts. Went out to what's the far east? St. John's.
St. John's is where my dad was born.
East, yeah. That's
St.
quite
John's
a town
Bay.
there, man.
Yeah, I want to get up there and scatter his ashes up there. Now that it seems like the flu world order is calming down a little bit, I got my passport coming in a couple months, so Canada's on my radar to get back up there. But it has everything to do with who we are. And you do think about it though. Why did I end up the person I am, caring about the stuff I care about? We'll never 100% have the answer, but we have some ideas about it anyways.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it right there. We're coming up on 2 hours here. Adam, I want as many people to follow you as possible because you've got the goods on all this stuff. Like we were saying, the three of us are we're the retards or whatever, but we want we know where the
Adam's
info
the real
is,
deal.
So, yeah. So tell everyone where they could go follow you.
Yeah, well, if you Google Adam Fitzgerald 9/11, I come right up. But I use my real name everywhere I go. So on Twitter, it's _Adam Fitzgerald. And I have a podcast called The Darkened Hour. And on YouTube, it's Adam Fitzgerald. But if you go to my Twitter, I have a lot of links to all my viral media. And, you could go right there.
All right, Tommy, where can people keep up with what you're doing?
libertarianinstitute.org/year-0/. Don't forget that second /. Harley cursed me with a second /. I don't know why.
And Eric.
Yeah, I hit subscribe on my YouTube channel. It's Jackman Radio. We're building that up and working on it. Twitter @Jackman Radio. We're on Spotify and Podbean and iTunes, and we got a Patreon page. Every dollar helps. I just ask people, if you like the work that my brother and I do, and you want to see us to continue to do it, $5 a month. It's patreon.com/Jackman Radio. And then I'm on Instagram. Senator Jackman's my handle, and Jackman Radio is the one for the podcast.
Yeah. And then obviously, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. I'm also on Odyssey, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And then you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all those places. Just go look in the link tree. It's on the homepage of my YouTube channel. And let's see, Tuesday we got Josh Smith coming on the show. Thursday we got the guys from the Biting the Bullet podcast, and I believe next weekend, as long as everything
Tell
works out,
Typo I'll see him in Childerberg.
I'll tell him next weekend I'll be in Florida at Top Lobster's house. All the guys from Tower Gang are going to be there, and Robbie the Fire.
Oh my god!
So make sure if you're in the area to show up for that. And yeah, with that, well, say goodnight to everybody. Thanks for joining and watching the show. And this was cool. It was cool to see this side of everybody instead of just talking about current events or politics or whatever.
Rothbardian and Bordertarian Mises.
Hoppa.
Yeah. Thanks, Reed, for inviting us. This was fun. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.